All right, welcome here to the Landman Season 2, Episode 1 Reaction Special Edition program. Warren Martin is with Kansas Strong. Myself, I'm Jason Spees. You can see the coffee here. We got steaming up. And I just noticed in the last kind of Billy Bob Thornton interviews, he does this too. And I don't copy him. I didn't try to copy him. I do it just because when I had my alopecia, I got very self-conscious about my hair, so I started wearing hats and bandanas, and it just kind of stuck with it because keeps the head warm, Warren. As my hair's growing back now, but I like keeping my head warm. I don't like hats and the way I look and everything, and I'm noticing I'm going to have to get a new camera here. But enough about me. Warren Martin, how you doing today? How was Landman? Let's get right to it.
I'm doing great today. It was a Landman hit, and there's a lot of excitement for it. I know API is really promoting it. I know that the AAPL, the American Association of Petroleum Landmen's, really involved in it, promoting it. So there's a lot of excitement about it, and there's a lot of opportunity for it to continue. As we talked about last season, the biggest thing about Landman is the fact that it allows for the conversation to be had about the oil and gas industry. It brings it into the public domain. I expect that to continue this season, and it started out with a bang. It started out with a bang in a lot of different ways, but it definitely started out with a bang.
Well, I find it interesting to see what your reaction is going to be because there was no cartel. It was a very humanistic, a very humanizing episode, if you will, set the table literally and also for the season. But just a quick recap here as we go into the intro. The show starts off, I'm sorry, during the recap, $3 billion per day, but you got to secure the rights and lock up the prices. That was the first thing that it said during the recap. And I thought to myself, okay, what they're talking about here is they're talking about the relationship with the landowners. They're talking about the relationship with the supply chain. And Warren, I wrote that down because it's a $3 billion a day industry, but they respect that you need to have these other two things in order to make that work. I thought that was setting the table for this. I wrote it down. Warren, what was your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, that's a huge number. First of all, to be talking about, that's very rare in the independent sector. Independents are much more in the millions of dollars rather than the billions of dollars. So it kind of sets it up in a unique perspective where it's just under what you might call the majors, but way over what most would consider the independents. But it definitely sets up I thought the recap did a great job of setting it up that it is a collaboration between the producer, the landowners, the royalty owners, and mineral rights owners, and the supply chain. That all works together to enable this industry to move forward. And you really have to have that working relationship among all of those parties in order to move the relationship forward. So it did a great job setting that up. The rest of the episode really didn't build off of that theme a whole lot. It was much more establishing the roles of what we saw last year from Tommy, from Cooper, from Angela, from all of the characters we saw last year, kind of establishing here's what their roles are going to be this year. And so it kind of took a real dynamic turn there.
Next, we have Cooper and the widow, Ariana, the crew member. I thought that was very interesting how they're setting up this relationship. They're almost going at it more from and I wrote this down a little later when they got into the program, but they did set up Cooper and the widow to kind of show that they are going to showcase this relationship this year. And of course, they've got a very complicated relationship. Cooper was part of the crew. The husband dies. He then all of a sudden is now with the widow of the crew member. So, and Warren, this is a common relationship actually, just in neighborhoods, in working environments that a lot of times people marry within circles, or coworkers or friends of the family and those types of things. Yeah, you meet somebody new and that happens too, but it's not uncommon to have that kind of, and they went into it last season with some of the friends and I think the family members where they wanted to go beat up Cooper because he was dating the girl. But your thoughts on bringing back this kind of complex relationship into the complex oil field?
Yeah, I thought that the relationship they brought back up, it's definitely something that you're going to see in any industry, but especially the oil and gas industry and the relationships that happen within it. It's a tight knit community. Probably my biggest disappointment was I was actually excited about the fact that they were bringing back this relationship and going to make it a central part of this season. I was disappointed in the fact that we went from Cooper talking with some farmers out in the field last year trying to put together a land deal of some sort. And it was initial conversations to now Cooper's drilling a well. And what a landman actually does is everything between those 2 points. And so I was a little disappointed in the fact that we just jumped over all of the stuff the landman actually does to get to the point of drilling a well, because I thought that was a really missed opportunity to explore how did Cooper get from going out and talking to a farmer and can I get your mineral rights to now we're drilling a well, because you got all kinds of things like raising the money, creating your investors, doing deals with the bank, and getting your line of credit set up. That's what the landman actually does, and we just kind of skipped all of that to get to the point where he's drilling a well.
Couldn't agree more. I wrote that down as one of the disappointments that I saw for the show, and they might go back to it later in the episode. But I got a little bit, and my disappointment was that I was just uncertain what timeline we were in, because when all of a sudden he's discovered oil, I went, "Whoa, what happened here?" Last season, he just got the deal. Like they spent more time showing him trying to get the deal from this farmer than they did him setting up the entire supply chain. And listen, folks, they these crews can set these rigs up in a couple days, so it's not like they're not capable of doing it. It's the in between part. It's kind of like when you sell a house, like a realtor. You know, if you sell a house today, it still takes about 45 days to close. There's
Yeah.
a little bit of some supply chain in between and some T's that need to be dotted and I's that need to be crossed. You know what I'm saying, Warren? Sometimes some things need to work out. Go ahead.
Well, in last season, what we saw him actually doing, we saw him talking to a couple of different farmers in last season. But what he was trying to put together was a series of sections, a series of plots of land that he would get the mineral rights together to put together a full lease. That wasn't just didn't just go talk to one farmer and the farmer gave him the mineral rights and he went and drilled. He was trying to put together a deal that was composed of a number of farmers that had varied plots and varied lands, sections and quarter sections and so on, to put together a full lease that he could then go explore. And we missed all of that. And so I hope that they go back and flash back to that. I'm not real optimistic that they will, because I think the show's kind of taken a different turn away from Landman and more into the the explosive aspects of the oil industry. But that was what a landman does. A landman does what Cooper was doing to get to the point, and that sometimes that can take years to put together those deals to get to that point where you can actually drill that first discovery well.
Getting back to the intro, Cooper and the widow, we jumped ahead a little bit to some of the discovery of the oil. Then in the intro, they did touch on the cartel relationship, so they previewed that will be a storyline coming up this season. Wasn't anything this episode. Andy Garcia, he wasn't even seen, wasn't any mention of it. But they did in the intro. They made sure that everybody knew that, hey, you guys do your business, we'll do ours, we'll look the other way. And then it came to a head to where now they're going to be partnering on a potential well pad here this next season. So just any quick comments on that?
No, I'm interested to see where it comes back in. I highly expected it to be in the first episode in some way, because, like you say, they showed it in the previews, they showed it in the recap of last season, but there was no mention of it. No, so it's going to be interesting to see how they come back in with that.
And then the last note I have for the recap of the intro, which those are important when you're dealing with the first episode from a season. It's not so much as we get going into episode 2, 3, 4, etc. But when you're coming off of a season finale, you know, John Hamm's character dying, Demi Moore's character taking over as the owner of the company, there wasn't much on the women at all in the recap. It was very patriarchal. It was very hegemonic, if you will. It was very male orientated. We didn't see much outside of the widow. That was it. It was just kind of the widow that shined, really. Maybe there was a little bit of Demi Moore that I missed, but that was my takeaway from the recap, Warren. That not much with the women. You've got the cartel relationship, Cooper and the widow, and then the $3 billion a day industry. Got to secure those rights. Got to get with the landowners and lock in the supply chain. So, the first 3 minutes of the show, Warren, he's standing outside. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. I think that was very telling, but the way that the first episode started up, I think that was intentional to set it up as this is a male-dominated industry, and then you go straight to Demi Moore making a presentation in the first episode. So I think that was intentional to some degree to set it up.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And I wrote that down in my notes too about the way that they did position the story arc in terms of when Demi Moore's character came in as the new JR of Dallas, which is kind of that's how I looked at it, Warren. I really started looking at it as kind of like, wow, this is kind of the new Dallas this season. It's taken on more of that soap opera drama than opposed to what we were talking about before, which is the supply chain educational part of the show that it kind of was last season a little bit more than this season. It really seems like it took more of a soap opera Dallas type of a turn, and Demi Moore is the new JR. I see you nodding your head, so go ahead. Your thoughts on that?
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that this episode took a dynamic change, changed the entire feeling of the entire show. We'll see what they do going from here, but I think it very much took it to that soap operic viewpoint, and where every character that was in this episode, with the exception of Cooper and his girlfriend, I think every single character in this first episode was stretched to the limit when it comes to over exaggeration. And
okay, well, first 3 minutes of the show, it starts out, it's dark outside. I actually thought it was night out, but then they're talking about breakfast, and you can hear him listening about the oil prices. He's smoking a cigarette, and I thought to myself, and this is when I thought it was nighttime, I thought, boy, that's actually a real shot, because when you're a business owner, you're a president, you're a CEO, or you work in the oil patch, you never stop working. You never stop working. You've got something going on in the background. Nowadays, you've got your phone with you. But, you know, it did set the tone for Tommy to a point, you know, where he's getting right to the point. Money talks. Here's $100. Go make it happen. I'm going to just, you know, that was what I took away from those first 3 minutes, that he's a very old school soul trying to really adapt in the kind of new modern society, to the tune to where the actual waitress said, yeah, we sold cigarettes like 40 years ago, pal. Like, to really point out that he's really kind of sticks out like a sore thumb here in today's modern world. But go ahead, Warren, your thoughts.
yeah, I think that you're exactly right there, because what we just talked about right before this was how the fact that I believe that every character that was there was like pushed to this absolute extreme of a caricature, and I think that's part of that. The part of that is pushing Tommy to that caricature position of old school, male school, you know, backroom deals with smoking cigars to get the deal done, and I think that it really kind of pushed it into that realm to set up polar opposites between where his son's going to be, where he's going to be, where his wife is, where Ham's wife is, setting it up to where you have a whole bunch of polar opposites that are really approaching this from a different perspective. And in that first scene, he goes after the cereal industry, and I come from Texaco, New Mexico, in the Lubbock, Texas area, where there's actually a town that's called Post, and it's named after the cereal company Post because they set up a factory there to harvest grains and turn them into Post cereals. And so he goes into the cereal industry and how no one ever ate breakfast before. I like the idea that no one ever ate breakfast before. And the only reason you eat breakfast in the morning is because it's a massive advertising campaign that everybody bought into. Well, that's just absolutely not true. We call it breakfast. And breakfast comes from the term break your fast. And when people would get up in the morning, they would break their fast of the night and eat breakfast of some sort. And a lot of times, the biggest meals they ate were breakfast and dinner at night when they would come back in, and they really wouldn't eat anything at lunchtime. That was the time where historically people didn't eat very much, was at lunchtime. And so, but he sets it up as if no one ever ate breakfast before until cereals were invented and this advertising campaign was put out, and now everyone's got to eat cereal for breakfast. No doubt there was a huge push in the 1920s and forward to establish cereal as the primary breakfast food, but breakfast was around a long time before then. And so, but it really kind of established this old school mentality that he represents the old school. He represents corporate America that sells everything to everyone, and you buy into the advertising idea, which goes with his cigarettes, which notoriously have been established as the primary way that advertising has worked to get everybody hooked on nicotine and hidden all of the health risks that come with it just in order to continue this industry to sell nicotine. And so all of that's kind of wrapped up in his character, that he is definitely the old school guy that's on the block.
If I were to bet my dollars and donuts on how that rant came about, Warren, here's what I would say.
My rant or his rant?
His rant.
Oh, okay.
His
good.
rant.
Just clarify.
Your rant was very spot on all the way to break fast, which is true. The breaking of the fast, that's how you get the name. So I truly believe when I watch that, in the moment, keep in mind, I have been in the media for a long time, and I've been a producer, and I've been an editor, and I've been an owner, so I have seen it from a lot of different angles. And I do know that the first season, his rant about the wind industry went viral. Yep. And that was one of the best marketing pieces for Landman itself. And they said that in interviews. Yeah. When Billy Bob was on Joe Rogan, they referenced that actual viral clip and everything. I think this was a forced attempt to have a viral video, Warren. I really believe that the first thing they wrote down as their intention was viral rant, and then they worked backwards. Whereas when they did the wind one, it was completely the opposite. They went with substance first. Billy Bob connected with it, and then it went viral. That's how my producer mind would work if I was to give you an honest reaction to that. And that's, a little bit on the writing, but on the flip side, if I'm going to say something a little bit negative towards the writing, which I'm not very keen on doing because, my goodness, they just put out this amazing show. I mean, who am I to criticize it? Well, I'm a guy that's, in my communication camper here. That's who I am today. But on the flip side, Warren, and I did write this down, that the writers for this show, I believe that they should be nominated for an Emmy just for the conversation between the women. The conversation between Allie Larder and Ansley, I forget her real name, but her character's name is Ansley. When they went to TCU, Texas Christian University, and had their horned frog, horned toad, it's a lizard, that was top notch. But then when she actually went into the application process and that back and forth, the entitlement, the actual just complete loss of that, it is so hard to write that dumb. It is so hard. The writer should get an Emmy based on that alone. My goodness, Warren. So if I'm going to kind of give him a little bit of a knock for going lazy on the, because I agree with you on the rant about breakfast, it was off. It didn't hit. It didn't hit. It'll probably go viral, but it didn't hit. The frogs and the whole college application scene, mwah, that was the coup de grace of the whole episode in my mind. Your thoughts on that, Warren?
Well, I'll go back to the rant first because, again,
Okay.
I think this entire episode was set up to establish the characters, and that's Billy Bob Thornton's character. That's what he does. Is his character is rant after rant after rant. So they had to establish that. So they gave him the rant about the cereal. Coming up to, I agree with you on the horned frog. That whole conversation about the horned frog, horny toad. Is it a lizard? Go for it. If you where I live out here, where I'm a huge Texas Tech fan, and so I'm in the Big 12. We play TCU, and so those conversations, they're ongoing. The fact that Texas A&M, their big phrase is "gig 'em," and why is it "gig 'em"? Because you go gig frogs, and that came from pep rally way back in the olden days when one of their, I don't remember if it was a coach or athletic director, stood up and he held up his hand and said, "Gig 'em, Aggies." And he was, because they were going to play TCU. They were going to play the Frogs. And so Texas A&M's chant, "Gig 'em," is about the Frogs there at TCU. And so that was classic. It's very much West Texas. I have to say, I was ashamed of being the father of four daughters when she went to interview for her position as a student at TCU. First of all, I don't know anyone who goes for an entrance interview. I don't know anyone that does that. I've never met anyone who's gone to actually have an interview to get in to get a position at a university. But second of all, I thought it was hilarious the fact that she says that she scored a 29 on her ACT, which is a highly respectable score.
Out of 36. Yes, out of 36.
And it's a highly respectable score, top 10 in her class, and then just absolutely couldn't understand the English language for the rest of the interview. Was mind-boggling to me. I thought it was the absolute dumbest conversation that I've ever heard in my life. But again,
are you telling me that when she said precipitate, you didn't laugh out loud?
I did not laugh out loud. I actually sat back and was like, okay, I agree with you. They deserve an Emmy because I don't know how you write that dumb. I don't know how you write that dumb. And
it's so hard.
It's so hard. It's like you write that. I know they're establishing her character as the dumb blonde on the show, but I know a lot of blondes, and I don't know any of them that would have missed out on every aspect and every word that was shared in that conversation like she did.
But I'll tell you what, that admissions, the admissions administrator, whatever her name, she was fantastic. She's like, this is the most offensive conversation I've ever been a part of. And I actually wrote this down, Ward, because this was really important to me. I thought that was one of the most realistic scenes. And where was this? Because it was a little bit later. All right, the writers, because we're jumping ahead here. The writers for the female conversation should win an Emmy. Top-notch segment. Shows how the real world works. Because this is the most offensive conversation. I think you're the most entitled person I've ever met in my life. But you check every box, so you're in.
Yeah.
I just went, oh, fantastic. That if that sums up that industry and just the whole deal, like unbelievably. And here, until you said horny toad, I didn't even put this together till now that they didn't say horny toad or horny frog. They said horned. Now, last season, they brought a senior center to the strip club, Warren. I mean, you and I were very uncomfortable watching some of those episodes, and we work in the oil and gas industry where that was pretty accurate. Okay, I mean, like this isn't that far fetched, but what they did today with this episode, there wasn't any sexuality at all infused into these women except for the way they dress, but that's normal. And I've had people come up to me and say, you say that Allie Larder, her character, what is it? What is her name again? I forget. It's
Angela.
she's what's that hot mess's name? What's her?
Angela.
Angela. People say that she exaggerates her character or there's not really women like her. And I look at him like, dude, she's plucked right out of West Texas, man. Like she is dead on. But Warren, it didn't dawn on me until you said horny toad that those two together, they had the horned frog set up. It's almost like they purposely put them in all this sexual infused language and then walked away from it so that we could see that they're just a couple blondes with a heart of gold. They just got
Yeah.
the heart of gold, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, in West Texas, where I grew up, in eastern New Mexico, West Texas, no one ever called those creatures a horned toad or a horned frog. Where I grew up, they were always called horny toads. That's what they
Mm-hmm.
were called, horny toads. And everyone, that's what they knew them by. That's what we talked. I mean, it was just the reference for that type of animal. It's only at the university level and other places where they call them a horned frog or a horned toad, or a horned lizard, I guess you might say, based on this episode. But one of the things that there wasn't really a whole lot of sexual innuendo. There's none really in this episode. But I did notice that they did use this episode to justify the sexual innuendos of the first season. They did use
Yeah.
this to go
Yeah.
back and talk about what happened in taking them to the strip club, taking them to that, and to justify that, people should be able to live a full life. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. People should be able to live a full life, whatever it is that they want to do. We have freedom in America. They should be able to do what they want to do freedom wise. But I did see this episode as trying to justify the first season.
Sticking on the women, we might as well here because there was just one more note really I had down was that, the dinner. They made sure that they had another dinner. To me, that seemed very purposeful as well, much like the viral rant that they attempted earlier. This seemed like this is going to be Allie's quest. Is she going to be able to have a dinner where she doesn't end up throwing plates at the end of it, where Tommy Norris, Billy Bob doesn't tick her off somehow, or the comic relief people actually enjoy her food or understand her food, because all she's trying to do is class up the joint. She's just trying to class up these roughnecks that just want spaghetti, to eat with their hands, Warren. She's just trying to class up the joint. It ain't working very good. So that was kind of my takeaway, was that they're going to make sure that she comes in as a motherly figure no matter what. And the dinners are a way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's two dinners that we talked that were in this episode, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna jump back to the beginning of the episode,
Yes.
and then come back to this one. And I'll go back to the beginning of the episode because I think that was the realest moment that was in the episode. And so you had Mrs. Ham coming, taking over the company as a whole. She's a widower, but she signed all of the leases. You had Billy Bob Thornton that's meeting with their partners, and the partners are trying to get out of deals that they're in, trying to renegotiate those deals. And he reminds them her signatures on all of those pages too. We're not changing companies. And then she has to make a presentation at a dinner luncheon that she's called with all of their investors, all of their bankers, all of the people that have money involved in the operations that they're doing. And she stands up and basically says, "Don't screw with me. Don't mess with me, because whatever you thought of him, I am much worse. I am much worse than that." And I think that that is probably the most real scene that we saw in this first episode, because I've been in the industry for now almost a decade. And I can tell you that when a company starts to consider selling out, when they start considering to consolidate, when they start making a big move, even the smaller companies and the independents, there are certain operations that take place. You start pulling different reports than you normally pull on a monthly basis. You start consolidating your expenditures. You start getting consolidating your staff to try and make as much money as you can before you pull out. There's a lot of things that begin to happen, and rumors begin to permeate the industry as a whole. We've had a couple major deals that have been done here in Kansas, and before those major deals were done here in Kansas here recently, everybody knew that they were coming down the pike. Everybody knew the parties that were in play in those. And so, she's walking into a room where there's all of these rumors and people beginning to leverage and trying to position to be able to take over more of the industry than they currently have, to take over more of the investments that they currently hold. Trying to find ways to leverage that to their benefit. That was probably the most real scene that there is that you can have, because like any industry, any big moves like that, there's none of them that happen in the complete dark hours of the night where no one sees them. There's too many people involved. There's too many companies, agencies, lawyers, and et cetera involved. Those rumors begin to permeate, and it really becomes the art of the deal, as Donald Trump would say. And how do you negotiate that room to ensure that people respect you, that people believe you when you say what you say and you're going to do what you say? And I thought that that was a highly pivotal moment that established her as the force to be reckoned with. And then you saw the old school, which we've already talked about, in Billy Bob Thornton's character coming in saying right after that, "Hey, whenever they call you, don't take their calls, send them to me, send them to me, send them to me, because all of the good deals are going to come to me anyway. Only the bad deals are going to go to you." And I think they're setting that up for some conflict where her and Billy Bob Thornton's character, her and Tommy are really going to have some conflict going down the road, because she established herself as a person who wants to be in charge, and Tommy really kind of undermined that in his conversations afterwards, saying, "You're not in charge, I am." And so I think there's some conflict that's going to happen there. And then we go to the scene with Tommy and Angela, and they're sitting around eating supper, and you realize Tommy's not in charge at all. Angela's going to spend whatever she wants to spend. She's going to feed whatever she wants to feed. She's going to throw food wherever she wants to throw it, and everybody's just going to have to deal with it. And so I thought it was kind of an ironic combination where you had you had one character, female character, that was trying to establish herself in charge, the other one who is absolutely in charge but has no authority behind it, and Tommy's kind of in the middle of these two.
Going back to the Demi Moore scenes here, closing up the dinner talk at the house, and now going to the start of the episode as we're kind of jumping around a little bit here, but that's okay. That's how we do things here. Jumping back, excuse me. I've got in my notes uncertainty, investors, relationships versus hard work and experience. That's really what I saw some of the setup being, was that Billy Bob was Tommy Norris was really selling the uncertain, or the investors, I'm sorry, with the Demi Moore's character coming in, very much represented uncertainty. And that makes the investors very nervous. And so Tommy starts selling relationships. He starts selling hard work. He starts selling experience. And Warren, I think that's where some of that came from, where um, Tommy is talking to the investors. He hears uncertainty and he goes back to her and he just starts shutting down everything because he just got done promising them something. Well, it's her company. She's got a whole different vision. Tommy's not used to that. Totally agree with you that, yeah, they might think they're on the same page, but they're going in different paths. So, what episode are they going to connect again? We'll have to wait and see. I did write down too that the first several minutes was that industry talk was probably the most dead on realistic part of the show. The deals, the industry talk, the well being done, using industry language slightly, but focusing on the bundle deal. Is geothermal included? Turnkey. I mean, that kind of bing bang boom. That was real. That was very real. But it wasn't overdone. Like I said, even in some of it, they used a little bit of industry talk, twinged a little bit of geothermal in there, and then move it on. And then they go to the bathroom scene where you've got the two young women, the climbers, the mean girls, if you will, which are extremely rampant in the oil and gas industry. Yes, they're common in other industries. They're very common in the media industry, but in the oil and gas industry, the end product is generally money. It's generally materialism. Whereas in like the media, it's fame and it's access, and in other industries, it's other things. But in the oil and gas, primarily, the end goal for these climbers and the mean girls is the money, is the what the Bentley, they said. I'm going to give them one of these pleasurable nights, and I'm going to come back with a Bentley and a condo. That I thought was very important, and they even pointed that out with Demi Moore saying this was a very important conversation I just had, almost like it reset her whole moral value chain as she was kind of not sure what to do. Your thoughts on that, because it definitely was a big part of the episode.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's two parts that you just brought up right there. One is that conversation that took place where Demi Moore's character is really establishing herself that I am not that. I am a serious business person that you're going to have to deal with, and my motivation is not the same motivation that you think all women have, which contrasts with what Tommy's character really puts forward. And what Tommy Norris, right before that, he does a deal. He does a quick-handed deal where he sells a large portion of the company to another individual. I think that's going to come back to haunt him. And I think that Demi Moore's character is really going to take issue with Tommy selling that without consulting her in the first place. And I think that is going to be where they come back together and they have a huge point. I think it's going to come from that simple sell that Tommy made that was almost nonchalant at the very beginning. And I think that is really what's going to come back. But I think that Demi Moore's character is really establishing the fact that she is a serious businesswoman. And in this series, she has to be taken as a serious business person. And the fact that she's a woman is irrelevant. She's going to have to be taken serious as a business person.
Interesting how they're positioning her. I never thought of that deal coming back, but now that I'm replaying that scene in my head, it's worth 600 million.
Yeah.
He was offered 3.
He took
well,
4.
I want 5. Well,
Yep.
How about 3.5? Well, we settle at 4, but it's worth 6. Tell you what, Demi Moore sits down with some government agent and she might get a couple $1,000,000 in certainty and grant credits, and all of a sudden she can get 5.
Yeah.
And now there's 100 million right there. So I think you hit the nail on the head on that foreshadowing. I really do, because they set it up that Tommy left 200 million on the table.
Yeah.
He left it right on the table just to move it along, in literally 30 seconds. 30 seconds. So, boy, that's interesting. I did also write down the new JR. We talked about that, how just in that first like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it just, and I didn't even watch Dallas, but I saw a couple episodes, so I knew about it. It was way before my time, but I know what a nighttime drama is. I know what Days of Our Lives is. I know what Knots Landing is. I know, what Melrose Place and 90210 is. And so I understand when they're setting up a show to really bring in more of a female demographic. And that's the part that was very interesting to me, was this show was extremely opening the doors for females, not like it was last season. This season, definitely a lot more. And with Demi Moore's character, did you ever see Ozark? Did you ever see Ozark at all?
Yep.
So Ozark has I forget, Laura Linney and Matthew Broderick, not Matthew Broderick. What's his name? It's one of my favorite characters from Arrested Development. And anyway, so Jason Bateman, and Laura Linney. And you'll notice in Ozark, Laura Linney kind of becomes the head, or she almost becomes the Gordon Gekko to Wall Street. Remember Wall Street with Gordon Gekko? Greed is good. Well, Laura Linney in Ozark said image is everything. And so there's this push been in Hollywood over the last decade to really position women as CEOs and power figures. And so I saw that happening, with the Demi Moore character, that they're positioning her into this power character. And it almost reminded me a little bit of kind of, are they trying to position it like Vicky from Oxy? Cause she's a female CEO, and she's kind of Oxy used to be an oil company. Now they're a carbon management company. But did you see any industry parallels there at all, Warren, with anybody with Demi Moore playing this position? Because there's not too many female CEOs in the oil and gas. Vicky, I forget her last name. I forget how to pronounce it. That's why I'm not saying it. From Oxy sticks out in my mind as somebody. But just your thoughts on the Demi Moore character, whether you want to compare it to kind of that Gordon Gekko greed is good, or the Ozark image is everything, where they're really positioning her to be the power figure.
Yeah, I think that I'm not going to name any names right now because I don't want to put them on the stage. But I think one of the key elements here is the fact that Demi Moore's character is set up as the largest independent producer in Texas, and that's the way that they established it. It's what she said in her speech. I own the largest independent oil producing company in the state of Texas. Makes her right underneath the the majors. It puts her outside of the control of being on the stock market or having to answer to stock. The people who own stock in your company having to do any of that. And I think that's a key thing, because you are seeing a lot of independent oil and gas companies that are coming up right now that do have strong women as the CEO, the head of the company, the president of the company, that are moving forward. I mean, right now here in Kansas, Cuyahoga is headed by a woman who is the head of her own CEO of her own company that has been in business for 80 something years. And she's a family member that's been passed from family member to family member, but she's the first family member that is a woman that's the head of this company moving forward. And she is the head of now the Kansas Independent Oil and Gas Association. You have a woman in Oklahoma who has been the head of the National Stripper Well Association and has led her own company and has led national organizations. And so I think in the independent space, you're seeing a lot more of those independent women that a lot of them, yes, they come up through the family. It's family businesses have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. But I think you see a lot of strong, independent female representation that is leading the oil and gas industry. Now, is it prolific across the board? No, but you're starting to see those women rising to those positions in a very strong and dynamic way and are very influential in the industry.
One of the ways I believe Landman this season is going to help women in the oil field. Well, first of all, just the direction they went away from the over sexuality with the Allie Larder and the other character, the other female,
I'm
Ansley.
I'm going to stop
Go
you right there because
Yeah.
I called it a horny toad, and I think that we're still going to see a lot more of that coming from TCU.
And we might, but this first episode, Warren, it was a hard turn from last season.
Yes, it was.
And like I
Yes,
said, it was almost like they picked the horny toad to set it up, that just to tell everybody, guys, we're not going to go for the low-hanging fruit this year. We're not going to do the low-hanging sex jokes this year. But the other part that I took away from the women part was, and the reason I think it's going to be very positive for the industry was Demi Moore was the one that stood up there in front of the men. So if she's strong enough to shave her head and go into the Army, and now she's strong enough to get up in front of everybody and tell all these men this is the way the world works, well, that's very empowering for women. That's very empowering for women that are aspiring to be a CEO. And if you can handle men in the oil and gas industry, well, that's the peak of the mountain right there. I mean, what, maybe coal, I guess. Is that even a thing anymore? But so that was the one takeaway I had. And then the other one was that she was the only one doing strategy, Warren. Everybody else was doing the same old song and dance. We mentioned that 30-second deal earlier. That was literally like 10 years ago, women planning a play date. You had two men putting together a deal like two women would put together a play date. Now you got Demi Moore's character coming in and actually doing strategy. That's new. That's a whole new storyline that the oil and gas industry's never seen. They've never seen a woman come in and actually be the one of strategy. It was always the men that had the strategy. That was not lost on me, Warren. That was not lost on me at all, that she was the only one trying to bring a new strategy into the oil and gas industry. Your thoughts?
Well, so I'm gonna preface this by saying, you talked about shaving her head and going into the Army and all of that stuff, and I think that that's all true. But the reality is we all know you can write anything you want into a script and make it play out in the show that you're writing the script for. And what it comes down to is it comes down to believability. Is it believable? And I can tell you right now that there are women in the oil industry that are doing things that are extraordinary. They are running their companies. They are making huge decisions. I was just at a meeting this past week where a woman got up and she's the head of her company. She's the head of an organization. She stood up and it was a powerful speech about the future of our industry here in Kansas. And that's what I saw when Demi Moore got up and stood up and spoke in front of those men at that luncheon. It was not only powerful, it was believable. And I just hope that as they go through the season, they keep her character not only powerful, because that is where women are in the independent oil and gas industry right now. They are powerful in the independent oil and gas industry, and they should be. I just hope that as they continue with the script, they keep her character believable, that it's powerful and believable. Because I tell you right now, here where we're at in the independent oil and gas sector, women are making a huge difference in our industry. So it should be believable. It should be powerful, and it should be a part of this script.
Going to some of the oil field B-roll as we transition into out in the field. Catchy music, upbeat, showing the oil field work, the dirty oil rigs, but hey, bopping my head a little bit. We got a 3-chord melody going. That's when I know they're really trying to connect with the audience. And that's very positive for the industry. And that's, I wanted to point that out to anybody in the industry watching that says that the media is always attacking the industry. There's an example of the media helping your industry. Showing oil rigs and having a 3-chord upbeat song that you can nod your head to versus having, remember the old O.J. Simpson? We're going to darken the mood lighting a little bit so we try to make him look more guilty, kind of like how you have the smokestacks going every time you see an oil rig and all these different, the flares and everything. So this was something that I thought was very positive. There wasn't much out in the field today. There wasn't much out in the field today. Anything that was out there, it was all positive. We had the one scene that I did want to ask you about where he was checking the pressures and watching the drill go in circles. Is there anything to explain on that, Warren, more for the audience, or was that pretty much what you see is what you get? Once it hits the magic numbers, go check the levels and see where you're at.
There's a lot more to it than that. It's not that simple. But I've been out on a number of rigs, and there's a couple pressure gauges where you're looking at the pressure that is on the drill head that's going down. You're looking at the pressures that are coming back up. There's a lot of things that are going into that. The major tell, especially in a lot. Yes, you run into places where there's high pressure reserves that you get into, that you have to look at those pressures that way. But a lot of times what you're actually looking at is you're looking at the cuttings that are coming up with the as the drill drills through the rock. It cuts up little pieces of the rock, and you're analyzing how much oil is in that rock, and the viability of getting the oil out of that rock. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just, hey, you drill until your gauge flips up, to a substantial pressure, and then you're done. There's a lot more that goes into that, a lot more technicality that goes into that. But what I will say is agreeing with you in the fact that the one thing this show does is this show is repeatedly over and over showing that people that work in the oil and gas industry, they have a tough job. They work long hours, they work hard hours, and they're proud of the work that they do out in the field. And I think that this show gives a lot of respect to the oil and gas industry because it is not an easy job. It is a hard job where the people who do it are worthy of the pay that they receive, and they should be proud of the work that they do. And I think that is very much a positive for our industry.
The first couple minutes, Cooper and Ariana, after the breakfast with Tommy Norris, they go to Cooper and Ariana, and their leadership and their power dynamic is foreshadowed in my mind. This isn't the way it's supposed to work. And she's very resistant to what he's trying to do, at least in my opinion. And this is real-time processing, but if they end up together at the end of the season, I'll be surprised. Now, there was a little bit of foreshadowing with, is she pregnant, a little bit later when Billy Bob Thornton brought that up. So I don't know if he's planting a seed there or just being, the old school father there. But Warren, I thought the scenes with Cooper and Ariana were, they didn't seem like they were getting along, like two couples should be that just won the lottery.
Well, I think that I kind of took a different approach from that, from the standpoint of, a lot of couples go through this scenario where, I think every couple goes through it where one of the spouses is highly focused on their work, the other one's highly focused on home life, and they're not seeing eye to eye. That's what I saw in what they started out portraying. And then the understanding of, when you get in those scenarios, a lot of times, I know in my marriage and in a lot of people's marriages of friends of mine around me, you're doing something at your job that is really important. And your spouse cannot understand the importance of it because they don't understand your industry. And I think that that's really what you saw happening here. Where, he's hitting a massive well that is like a lottery ticket, that you're hitting a lottery ticket there. And I think that what they were portraying more than anything else was she just absolutely didn't understand. She didn't understand that their life was completely about to change, or the standpoint of they're not married and his life could completely change, but is that really her life too? He says she's doing it for her, but legally they're not connected together. So I think there's a whole lot of different ways that they could go with the script going forward, from the standpoint of, is there trouble in the relationship, or is this for her, and is he doing something that she's going to take control of down the road, or is he going to begin building an empire and leave her out of it? Especially with what you're talking about with Tommy coming to Cooper and saying, is she pregnant, right off the bat, and you see a sense of non-acceptance there from the extended family. And so, there's a whole bunch of issues that are involved there, where I think that they were really trying to portray her as not really understanding what had just happened completely. And then, second of all, not really understanding her position in what just happened, because legally they're not married. It's not hers, it's his. And so,
It's
where does it go from
that
here?
that whole the approach they brought to Cooper this season really is confusing to me.
Yeah.
Um, we talked earlier about how they kind of did the. I used to joke about. Did you ever watch the show Seinfeld?
Yeah.
So J- Jerry would always go on a date with the hottest women on the planet, and they would never show how he actually asked her out. They would show them talking about it, and then they'd show him out on the date, and I would get so mad because I'd be like, well, they don't show him actually asking her out. That's the part I want to see. How's he doing it? And that's how I felt like with the Cooper Landman supply chain that we talked about earlier, how finally got the deal, the handshake with the farmer, and all of a sudden now he's won the lottery ticket. And their relationship where he's like, I'm doing this all for you. And I'm thinking, dude, you just like met her like 3 months ago. And so I'm not sure I understand the timelines on some of these too. So I'm a little bit, I guess, relaxed on that relationship and the way it's going to go. But I think they're forcing it. They're trying to force too many storylines into it. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see. I mean, it's a common relationship, so I'll give them that. It's an extremely common relationship. Now, how the money dynamic works, that's going to be very interesting because, yeah, if you put yourself in her shoes, this guy just said, guess what? We're millionaires. We are millionaires. I did this for us. We'll see how long that lasts. So, interesting. But 17 minutes in, and the teaser's finally over, Warren. We're finally at the the title track now. We're getting to the intro. 17 minutes in, and the writers. Let's see. We got the females going there at the Horny Toads. We introduce a new character. We have Sam Elliott. He's going by the moniker TL. A little bit different of a introduction I wasn't expecting with Sam Elliott, and he's in a wheelchair, but he can get up, and so it's just more of a when he goes outside, he's got to be in a wheelchair. So I found that to be a little bit of an interesting scene with Sam Elliott. I've got some thoughts on it, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on the introduction of Sam Elliott, known as TL.
Yeah. So TL comes in. Sam Elliott's, of course, one of my favorite actors of all time. Sitting there, watch the sun set in the evening, and absolutely insisting that he wants to see the sun go down. Very metaphoric in the idea of when you feel you only have a few days left, you want to see every sunset going down. That's the storyline that I got communicated. As we went through the episode, we found out his wife is in a memory care center, which obviously means dementia, Alzheimer's, something along that regard, and she dies. And as she dies, Tommy's notified. Which TL you're thinking, is this Tommy 1 and Tommy 2? I don't know, but you got TL and Tommy, and Tommy's notified and so is TL. TL's notified, and I thought it was really interesting when he's notified. The guy shares with him that you'll see her again soon. Excuse me, you'll see her again, and his response is, "Well, I hope not, because if I see her again, I'll be in hell too."
Yeah.
And, which obviously shows there was some disharmony within the relationship. They didn't have the best of relationships, or they didn't have the best of presence on this earth going forward, which kind of helps you kind of maybe understand Tommy a little bit more. But I think that, again, this episode was really establishing, I believe, all of the characters' prototypes and what you can expect from them going forward. And I think that we're going to see Tommy going to his mother's funeral, reconnecting with his dad, Cooper reconnecting with his dad. It's going to be interesting. Does TL come home with Tommy, or does TL come home with Cooper? But I guarantee he's going to come home with one or the other, and it's going to have an impact on one of them. I tend to lean towards the fact that TL is going to come home with Cooper and help him turn his new mega fine into an oil company.
Oh, I think you're probably right on that. I think he's going to probably connect with Cooper on that, because the other part I wrote down about Cooper was the way they introduced the way they introduced his whole life. It's just too good to be true right out of the gate. So it can only go down. Like,
Yeah.
Cooper's life is only going to get worse going forward. Like, that's how I kind of looked at it. Like, nobody gets at the top of the mountain in episode 1 without coming down. And so I think you're probably right on the TL is probably going to hitch up with Cooper a little bit to kind of show him how to reinvest that 75% that he's supposed to be making off of each well. I wrote down on the sunset part, and that was interesting. I didn't catch the enjoying every last one because you only have so many left, and that's true. That is true, but I guess I didn't really see that his passing was as imminent as probably you did, because I didn't catch that "you'll see her soon" part. But he did look frail. He looked weak. And they definitely wanted to make sure that they portrayed that with him. But I kind of wrote down the sunset as, and he wrote down he said till you get to June 21st, he had his own little rant.
Yeah.
Till you get to June 21st, couple minutes a day, and I'd get into it, but you wouldn't understand it. And so he kind of portrayed that he was like Billy Bob Thornton. He was like Tommy. But I wrote down the sunset more as that drive for certainty. As you get older in life, you need certainty. You need routine. You need things to count on, because you are getting frail. Your memory's going away. There's so many things that you're not the same anymore. So the sun is the most reliable thing on the planet. It's one of the reasons I have a dog. It's the most reliable piece of unconditional love a man can find in today's world, if he's not married, is a dog. And so that's, men look for their forms of certainty. And that was my takeaway, was that it was a little bit of foreshadowing too of the way Tommy's going to turn out, because he was acting like that with Demi Moore. He was turning into that, hey, I'm going after certainty, boom, boom, boom. Just kind of your thoughts on that with the certainty of the sunset.
Well, I think that, basically I feel very slighted from the fact that you don't see my love as real towards you, and you see the dog is more dependable. Anyway, no, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of metaphors that went into that and that really set him up as we're going through that with some of our family members at this point in time, and all of us go through it at different points in time, where you start getting older in life and you start looking for relevance. And certainty gives you relevance. Continuousness gives you relevance. He sees the sun go down and he looks at the sun and looks where it went down and says, "I'll see you tomorrow." And it's kind of one of those things that you're looking forward to, that you're checking off that box that says, "I'm still here. I still count. I still matter."
Other notes as we kind of wrap up here. The lawyer, his first line, kind of a political correct DEI ESG humor line. So he had probably two or three lines in the whole episode, and each one kind of brought some humor in there. And what was the other thing? Let's see, season one episode. End with Tommy's mother dying. She was in a separate memory care home than Sam Elliott, so there was obviously some kind of issue there, and we brought that up about how there was a little bit of not only the memory issue, but sounded like there were some personal issues too that happened within the family. And then I wrote down the theme song as very corporate and inspiring. You know, it didn't have that country rock and attitude that the oil and gas industry tried to bring on to the public for the last 20 years or 15 years, you know. I think they tried it with Don Johnson, Blood and Oil, and a few other things. But even with the Crude Life, when we came out with a song, it was a more of a rock type of an anthem because that's how I felt like we could connect with the audience more. But the theme song stood out to me. It sounded very corporate, sounded like something you would hear at an inspirational type thing. And Warren, I've been doing music beds for 20, 30 years, so I know what category certain music is in. But that was my kind of my final takeaway on that, was that even the theme song was trying to connect in new ways that the industry just really hasn't in the past. So overall, I thought it was a good episode. It laid the tracks a little bit, but I definitely have some questions with Cooper. Definitely have some questions with Ariana, and I'm really looking forward to more of the writing and conversations with the women as they go to the Horny Toad University, Horny Frog University, TCU. Do you think TCU paid for that, by the way, or do you think they just went with the Horny Toad thing?
It's amazing. I don't know. On that because TCU used to be the Texas Christian University. They've kind of gone away from Texas Christian University to just TCU,
Yeah.
and so I have no idea what it certainly doesn't hurt them to be portrayed in a show like this. But I think that this episode did really nothing to enlighten us as far as where the plot and where the storyline is going for the rest of the season. I think it predominantly was set in place to establish each character and give us a good picture of who each character was that's in the story. And so I think it's going to be episode 2 before we really begin to get into the storyline.
It's interesting the way you just phrased that, because if I'm going to put my producer's hat on for a second here, and what you just said was really important, because I agree with you that they might have looked at this like they were bringing in a whole new audience that they never had before. And so they had to reset. They had to do a little bit of reset while hanging on to the audience like you and I and others that came through the first season. And, from a producer standpoint, great job, top notch. I mean, they shifted the character development of the women. They amplified Demi Moore's character from two lines to becoming. I think she had two lines last season to becoming one of the more powerful characters. And I saw Sam Elliott in a way that I've never seen him before. It was a little disturbing to see how thin his arms were. Like oh man, I felt like I was watching the concert with Gordon Lightfoot, one of my all-time musical heroes, but I saw him less than a year after he had throat surgery in his 70s. So I wish I would have never went to the concert, because it kind of ruined my thought of him. That was like how I thought about Sam Elliott at first, because I'm with you. He's one of my favorite of all time. And I went, oh boy, he looks old. He looks frail. He looks fragile. He's he's not the guy from Roadhouse and The Big Lebowski and all these great movies that I remember him from. But anyway, well, we'll wrap her up, Warren. Any final thoughts you might have?
No, I think that you hit the nail on the head that Sam Elliott was really shocked the way that they portrayed him, because you've always seen him as the hero. You've always seen him as, so I'm actually really excited to see what character he ends up playing on this. going forward. And I agree with you. I've had the honor of meeting three Medal of Honor recipients from World War II. And yeah, before I met them, I read their stories, I learned about them, and then when I met them, they're men in their 80s, and you're looking at them, realizing how in the world did this guy do what I read about in their accommodations, and but it actually, when you spend a little time with them, it gives them more power than they ever had before, because you realize it's one thing to look at a Medal of Honor recipient and think about them in terms of, this is a superhero that did something absolutely extraordinary. But when you talk with them in their 80s and you realize this is just a man, this is just a man who did extraordinary things that any other man could have done if they would have just made the same decisions and made the same choices. And I'm really hoping that Sam Elliott's character in this is kind of in that fold, from the standpoint of they brought him in looking frail and he comes out being extremely powerful as we go through the season. Because I have a lot of respect for his character. I have a lot of respect for the things that he's done in the past.
Well, they just had an interview we published at the Crude Life, and this is probably why I was so shocked, because I think we got about 15 photos from Paramount, a bunch of from season one that they sent out. And I've just kind of been randomly putting them up over the last few months as I put stories up about Landman. And I had one or two of Sam Elliott in this season. And I think he's wearing, like, it looked like, like he was dressed from like Tombstone, like a black, kind of collared shirt type of a thing. And he looked normal. So then when I saw him today, I was like, whoa, what's going on here? This doesn't look like the photo I just published. So I think he's going to probably take a shower and put on a collared shirt and look like the Sam Elliott that we know and love through the years. But man, that was a shocker to me. That he looked old, he looked frail, top notch work. Anyway, great acting. I'm excited for this year's storylines. I'm excited for this season. And we'll be back next week. Warren Martin from Kansas Strong. My name is Jason Spees, and we'll see you, folks.